Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to share with you the best books by Black authors I have read in the last year. I did a video like this last year as well, which I will link down below, and I also did like a kind of like all-time favorite books by Black authors video that I will also link. So this is kind of like an update to this list. Now in February we have American Black History Month, so I usually try to shout out my favorite authors and books by Black authors in this time. Now, especially with what is going on in the US right now, we all have to stand together and to fight for diversity and equity and inclusion in all the ways that we can, and that also includes supporting Black authors and authors of color, and also other artists of color, and small businesses by Black people and stuff like that. So just try to be mindful and do all that you can, especially if you are in the US right now. Obviously in Germany I am a little bit limited with the things I can do, but there are still things I can do, like going to protests and stuff. So yeah, we all need to do these things. But today I want to share with you some book recommendations, and I hope you find something interesting to read. I have sorted these by genre, so we're going to start out with horror and thriller, and the first book I wanted to mention was The Changeling by Victor LaValle. Last year I did a whole reading vlog about this book that I will link down below as well if you want to hear all of my thoughts on it. In this one we follow a young father, and his connection to his child is very strong, but then a tragedy strikes, and it is about his fight to see whether he can get his child back, basically. This has a very strong like fairy tale vibes, and it is a horror, so I would not recommend this book for young parents. I think that could be like very traumatizing to read if you have a young child. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I think it explored some interesting things, and this deals, for example, with the question of what we share on the internet about our children. It also has like some discussion on postpartum depression, and yeah, I think it's just a very important read. Next up we have Out There Screaming, edited by Jordan Peele. This is a short story collection from many different authors, and these are all horror stories that focus on Black characters, Black experiences, and I really enjoyed this book. Not every story in here was like a super hit for me, but there was no story that I absolutely despised, and some of these were amazing. So I definitely recommend this if you enjoy short story collections. I know that not everyone does, but if you do, definitely try this one. Then we have When the Reckoning Comes by McQueen. This is a horror story that follows three characters that were childhood best friends. Two of these characters are Black, and the kind of girl slash woman of them is the main character that we follow. There was also a Black boy slash man, and then we have a white girl slash woman. And so we do follow this story as the white woman is getting married on a plantation that was very close to where they grew up, and since then they have grown apart, but she invites her two like childhood Black friends to the wedding, and yeah, things happen. This also focuses a lot on their childhood, so we do have kind of both timelines, and yeah, it just deals with this idea of like what is left behind on a plantation like that, and yeah, if we should like kind of make them into like travel destinations. Then we have two books by the same author. These are both YA books. We have Their Vicious Games and The Blonde Dies First by Joelle Wellington. For me personally, I preferred Their Vicious Games. In this one, we follow a girl who is about to graduate from like high school. She went to this very preppy school because her parents were teachers there, so she was allowed to attend. And she got into Yale, but because of something that happened, the kind of confirmation that she can go there has been withdrawn, and now she has this like one chance to get back into Yale by competing in this very weird contest that one of the like very wealthy white family holds, where one girl is kind of like singled out through different trials to get basically everything that she wants. This is obviously much more sinister than it sounds, like even more sinister than it sounds, and so we follow her on her way through these trials, and I absolutely love this one. It's like eat the rich with such a passion. It was great. And then The Blonde Eyes First is a slasher where we follow a group of kids. Some of them are black, but there's also like other kind of like minority groups in there, and one of these like kids goes to a preppy white school, and so when this friend group attend one of the parties of the rich white kids, they do like one of those like Ouija board situations, and after that a monster seems to be hunting them down and trying to kill them. And yeah, that one was very intense. It also has a lot to say about like communities, especially with the idea of like you know, improving buildings in communities and kind of like selling them to richer people and all of that. So I had a good time with that one. The next one is also YA, and that is Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Faridah Àbíké-Íyímídé. This is the second book by the author. I absolutely loved her first book, Ace of Spades, so I went into this book with like the highest high expectations, which this second book didn't quite meet, but it was still a really good YA thriller. And this one, we follow a girl who starts attending a very prestigious private school, and so far she has been homeschooled, but she goes to this school and she has kind of an agenda there. We don't really know much about that, but when she gets there, she has a roommate assigned, and in the first night that she's there, her roommate disappears, and so it's all about like what happened to the roommate, but also like why is this main character at the school. The next up for classic or modern classic or whatever you want to call that, I have Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. Again, I did a whole reading vlog about this book last year, which I will link down below for all of my thoughts. This was my first James Baldwin, and I am so excited to read more. This is very autobiographical in a way. In this book, we follow a teenage boy. I think he is about 14, and this is set basically during like one night of his life, but we get flashbacks to kind of like the important people in his family. I think we have his father, his mother, and his aunt, if I remember correctly. This book deals a lot with religion and faith, and when you like are a teenager and you start figuring out that you might be queer. So a lot of like very important topics that are touched upon in here. And then you have this whole like family dimension as well, where we just see the different people in his family, how they grew up, what challenges they faced, and how that impacted who they are as people in this teenager's life now. And it's just phenomenal, and I just want you to pick this up so bad. Then we have contemporary or literary fiction. I first have a YA recommendation, and that is We Deserve Monuments by Jess Hammonds. This is a very impactful book. It was one of my favorite books of last year, and in this one we follow a young girl. She is she's into girls. I'm not quite sure if she was bisexual or lesbian. I'm leaning towards... Oh, I don't remember. But yeah, she's into girls, and she is moving from like a city to a more rural area in the US with her family because her grandmother has a very severe illness and is going to die soon. And so the family is trying to form a lost connection to this grandmother. And so far, our main character hasn't really had any relationship with her grandmother because of like issues within the family. And so it is her like first and last chance to get to know her grandma. And so we have this, which is already so impactful, but this also deals with like teenage love, especially if it is queer, and when you are supposed to kind of suppress it because it would be frowned upon where you live, and yeah, all of these important topics. Then we have a bit of an odd one, and that is Gingerbread by Helen Oyeyemi. This is a kind of fairy tale retelling literary fiction that basically deals with immigration in a sense. So in this book, we follow 3 generations of women, I believe, and they have this like weird history with another family that is very privileged, and it is like they came from a weird country that isn't really like clear whether it actually exists. So it is like very literary, but very interesting, and I definitely think that Helen Oyeyemi's books are very specific, so if you like them, you like them, and if you don't, you don't. But I have always found like something in them that intrigued me. And then we have A Spell of Good Things by Ayobami Adebayo. Again, this is a second book by an author that I had previously loved. Somewhere behind me is the first book from this author, and I wish for this. I read it. This is again a book where my expectations were like up here and the book just didn't quite get there, but I still think it is an interesting read. In this one we follow 2 characters, a young boy and a young woman. The boy lives in poverty while the young woman is from a privileged family and she is a doctor, and it is about her struggles with her family expecting her to marry, but she is really into her job and all of that, while the young boy is just struggling with the poverty of his family. He's trying to help provide because his father suffers from depression and he can't really help the family. And yeah, this is just such a layered story because of these 2 POVs. This book is set in Nigeria, so it also touches upon different like rules and just like things that are going on in Nigeria. So yeah, it was just very interesting, but also very heartbreaking. This is not a happy read by any means, and yeah, for me personally it was almost a little bit too sad at times. Then for fantasy, I have 3 books, but they're all from the same author, which is kind of unfortunate, but also like so real. It's so real. So we have The Black God's Drums, The Dead Cat Tail Assassins, and The Angel of Khan El-Khalili by P. Djèlí Clark. Let me start at the end there with The Angel of Khan El-Khalili. This is a short story that is set in the Dead Jinn universe. Absolutely loved it. It was really great. There is a way to read it and also to listen to kind of like an audiobook-ish thing. I will link both of those down below. I would highly recommend you check them out. It is a book about a young girl who goes looking for an angel to ask for a miracle. And then we have The Dead Cat Tail Assassins. While I didn't absolutely love this book and it didn't quite reach my like 5-star expectations, it was still really good. In this one we follow a woman who made a deal with the goddess to become an assassin when she died. So she's basically not dead but also not alive, and she's working as an assassin, and she gets this job to kill someone, but when she gets there she recognizes the person. So instead of killing them, she decides to find out what's going on because she's not supposed to have any memories. Last but not least, we have The Black God's Drums. This is also a novella, so quite short, as The Dead Cat Tail Assassins was as well. And in The Black God's Drums we follow a young girl. This is also steampunky, and we have her like uncovering a plot of like racism, and yeah, it's like very disturbing. I feel like P. Djèlí Clark can write very disturbing books, and this is one of them, but I would highly recommend, if you like dark things, then you should check out this novella. Surprisingly, we do have a romance as well, because I don't tend to read a lot of romance, but this is a holiday romance. It is called Christmas at the Gingerbread Inn by Michelle Stimpson. In this one, we have 2 main characters. We have a man who has recently lost his mother, and he feels like his family is kind of breaking apart. And so he's going back to a kind of like holiday inn where they had spent a family vacation together many years ago, to kind of like relive his happy memories of his family there. And then we follow a woman who took over this inn from her parents, and she's struggling with it because she really is a musician musician, and so she wants to pursue her musician's career, but also like doesn't want to disappoint her parents who gave her the in. And we have like a very, very sweet romance with these two characters. What I loved about this one is how much these two characters supported each other in their decisions. And yeah, it was just overall really fun time for the holidays. Last but not least, I have two non-fictions. First of all, we have Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings. This is a non-fiction book that looks at the connection of fat phobia and racism. This is a historical work that goes through the different centuries and looks at a view of bodies and also of race in those times and how these two influenced each other. Basically, this is like one way to explain why the thinness norm is especially prevalent for white women, while it is not enforced in the same sense with women of color. So I was like really inspired by this because this is one of my research topics as well, and I absolutely loved learning more. I loved the way that this had this historical approach, which I do not have in my research, so it was like very complementary basically to my current knowledge, and I just really recommend this. It's very readable even if you're not a researcher, and it's just a phenomenal nonfiction book. And last but not least, a memoir, The Pretty One by Kia Brown. This is written by a disabled Black woman, and this also deals a lot with media. So if you are into kind of like the 2000s media of the US, like the TV shows and all of that, I think this would be an absolute hit for you. As this wasn't like the favorite book I read last year, but it was still very interesting to have an insight into this person's life and just how like disability and her race impacted her life and the things that happened to her, the decisions that she made throughout her life and all of that. I would definitely recommend. It was very interesting, especially as an audiobook, as it is also narrated by the author herself. So that is my final recommendation for this video. Now I would love for you to leave me your recommendations down below. I would love to check out even more books. I already have like a ton of on my like wish list and TBR obviously, but if you have anything that you think I have to check out, then let me know in the comments, and I hope you have a very lovely day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.